Q News. So what do you make of Trump's escalating legal and political pressure on the BBC?
Well, thank you for your question, Mark. First of all, this is a crisis, as you mentioned, is a crisis of credibility. BBC's credibility has been damaged. It is under attack. The question is how much more of it BBC can take. Because if this case would go to trial, definitely would go to trial. The reason why it would go because the present management in BBC has no power or authority to settle because, as you said, BBC is publicly funded. So it will have to court. During the court procedures, as President Trump has said, there will be many more people who would come and make similar claims against BBC, being unbiased and not presenting the report honestly. We already know in case of President Trump, the Newsnight program, there's already one, and there are also several which are coming up. So then during the trial, in the next 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, more would come. The new management then would come and say, this is publicly funded institution, but we need now to settle this case. And they would eventually settle because I don't see BBC being able to take more damage to its credibility.
And the BBC has apologized to Donald Trump. What had happened on January the 6th, he'd made a speech and they'd edited 2 parts of the speech, which are an hour apart, in a documentary which aired just before the American election. The BBC apologized, but says that it only aired in Britain, so it could not have had any effect on the election. Also, Trump won that election. Despite that, Trump is asking for damages of between $1 billion and $5 billion. As you mentioned, the BBC is paid for by taxes, by a tax that everyone has to pay in Britain. So he's basically asking $5 billion from the British taxpayer, is he not?
Absolutely right. And the excuses the BBC are putting forward, which I understand, they have to do it at this stage. It's like a bank robber saying that I only robbed bank in Italy, so I cannot be prosecuted in Britain. And that's their defense right now. It was a dishonest. They were saying that President Trump was calling for violence, which is a big accusation, big accusation. And right now, President Trump is very angry. And the reason why he cannot let go of this case is because if he does let go of this challenge to BBC, then he cannot challenge the other news media in future. So the question is the conversation between President Trump and Keir Starmer. Would the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, would be asking President Trump to drop this case? And would that be a wise approach to ask President Trump to drop this case? Because I cannot see President Trump wanting to drop this case or would drop this case for his own strategy.
I mean, he'd be wanting something at least in return, I would imagine. I mean, he's tried this on various networks in the United States, and many of them have capitulated and paid him out money. Nowhere near this amount of money, $1 billion, which he's asking of the BBC. Is there anything you think that Keir Starmer could offer Donald Trump that would make him back down?
Well, first of all, the money is not, the amount of money is not the question. Is the payment of the money is just confirmation that there was malice there. It was something very wrong. So that's the amount, whether it'll be 15 or 16 million dollars as he has paid previously to other news media, which most probably would be the settlement around that much. And this 1 billion is just to get more attention towards BBC, and 5 billion even to get more BBC of what is happening, this attack on BBC. So again, I would say the BBC has to settle this as soon as possible. BBC right now is saying we are strong enough, we could stand up to President Trump. They could if they were honest on this. But then if more allegation comes up, more cases comes up, and we know already about other cases, it's all over. And then there will be more whistleblowers, and then most disgruntled employees coming up with more even facts about BBC being unbiased and not reporting honestly. So can BBC take that risk? And again, the question is, what could Keir Starmer, who is a weak prime minister right now, his own survival is not clear, whether he would survive in the next 6 months or a year or so, after the 26th of November when the budget will come out. So there are all these issues. So I hope that Keir Starmer would interfere and settle this case somehow, and there has to be some payments.
You mentioned there other accusations of bias that the BBC has been accused of. In the same report, they were accused of being anti-Israel in another program. They also regularly get accused of being anti-Palestine as well. The report the article that I mentioned and referenced just a little while ago says that the BBC is in permanent nervous breakdown. Why do you think the BBC has become so fragile?
Well, we all believe in freedom of expression, but then even freedom of expression has its own limit. You cannot make false allegations against people. You cannot intimidate people. You cannot insult people. You cannot defame people. But somehow recently, in the last 10 years, especially since President Trump first term, all this has gone out. There is no accountability on the media. It seems like an open field to start defaming people, insulting people, intimidating people. So now I think a return of accountability, even for journalists, it's a good thing for the public.
But do you think that perhaps institutions like the BBC, perhaps the New York Times, which often come into Trump's eye line for criticism, are kind of held to a higher standard when they do make mistakes? They apologize for them. There are other outlets and other media that don't and perpetuate untruths as a matter of course.
Well, I would say it's nothing to do with whether New York Times or BBC or other medias. Most of them are on left of politics. Generally, most journalists and people in the media are on left of politics, there is nothing wrong with it as long as they report honestly. But there is that unnecessary hostility towards President Trump, which is not, you cannot explain it, why there is so much hostility towards President Trump. And that actually reflects in the reporting, which most of them, even if they want to report honestly, they cannot report honestly. And we've seen that all the time. And even now, you see it with BBC, the way they are, instead of sincerely apologizing, they're just saying it was a mistake. This has never happened before. We are credible. We are the best in the world. Which is not the case. This self-congratulations is not a good thing for any institution.
But when journalists are attacked, and Trump has made a career, some might say, of attacking and trying to silence journalists, and when lawsuits for a lot of money, when media organizations, not just the BBC, but all over the world, are struggling, might that lead to self-censorship on the part of journalists?
This self-censorship is a joke. There is no censorship. Self-censorship it's like open field that, as I said, they can insult anybody, intimidate anyone, defame anybody. And the only reason why President Trump can defend himself, because average person in public cannot defend themselves. We've seen that many times, even in Britain, in United Kingdom, with many cases. And it just takes strong individuals, very strong individuals like President Trump, who can take on the media. And he's done it, and he's doing it, and he's made a mission out of it. So he's actually doing a public service by making news media's journalists accountable one more time to the public.
Now, you live in the UK, of course, and will take in, I would imagine, British media. The law, the rules in Britain, in broadcast media, in television, radio media, is that in news you must give both sides of the story. So in Gaza and Israel, you must give both sides equal weight. Do you see, it's called impartiality, do you put any weight behind the idea of impartiality, which is not the case in the United States?
Mark, you missed the word honestly. You said both sides of the story, but both sides of the story have to be reported honestly. So what's the point of both sides of the story are reported, but it is dishonest reporting? So this is what I think is missing right now, that inherent honesty. Of course, you are a fantastic journalist. You are a very honest journalist. That's why we are having this discussion. But I can say many of your colleagues, especially in United Kingdom and in part of America, are very dishonest when it comes to reporting.
And what about the way the BBC is funded by taxpayers? They call it the license fee. Everybody who has a television must pay it. Can you see, when there's the likes of Netflix out there and streaming services, could you see the BBC funding model surviving for the next 10 years?
BBC will be always be funded publicly. BBC in Britain is like the monarchy. It's part of our culture. It's part of our heritage. It will be always part of the public sector, publicly funded. We need that for many reasons, but the question is, in last 20 years, I go back as 25 years, the left of politics has taken over, and it started in 1990s when they took an anti-monarchy stance in 1990s, and also other institutions, instead of just concentrating on reporting the news, especially on politics. So it is now dominated by left of politics. It is not an allegation. You only have to look at it the way they report the news. So that we need a balance. And I have to say, there is also an issue, people on the right of politics, they don't go into journalism. That's their fault also. So we need more people from right of politics to go into journalism.
It's interesting that you put the BBC as an institution alongside the monarchy there, another institution which has its issues at the moment as well. Babak Emamian, thank you so much for joining us as always. Thank you very much.